Hi there, I'm Jacoby Nelson, and my wife and I have been missionaries for the past 5 years in Odessa, Ukraine, and missions work is all we want to do, it's all we plan to do, and we don't ever plan to retire. I was a fisherman for the past 15 years in Alaska, and this past summer a fisherman asked me, so if artificial intelligence was invented, should robots be programmed with a tendency towards any one religion? That's a good question, I said, and then after some reflection, I gave him my answer. Actually, yes, robots should be programmed with a proclivity towards Christianity. Why? Because all that we people do should be done to glorify God. So if in some way robots could serve humanity by helping us do that, then they should be programmed to do so. If our chief end is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever, how could robots help us do that? Perhaps they could create an algorithm that produced alphabets for people groups without a written language and then translated Bibles for them within seconds. Or they could smuggle Bibles into North Korea or maybe go protect Christians in Muslim countries against persecution. They could even direct parking at megachurches and monitor refreshments at the guest counter. They could also be walking concordances. They could even have a database of every version of our favorite worship songs. In Christ alone. All of our decisions and all of our resources in life, yes, even our robots, should be bent towards optimizing the glorification of God in the world. Our money, relationships, abilities, skills, talents, possessions, careers, cars, clothes, diets, health, ambitions, both big and small, our phones and tablets, and yes, even our robots, should all serve this greater purpose, helping us to best glorify and delight in God. Anything that we love should be loved for His sake, and missions is a means to make more worshipers who love God in this way. Let's go back to the beginning. God's eternally an outward being. The Trinity's been perfectly selfless in all of their dealings with one another and with mankind. All that is good and beautiful flows from God as its source. The universe, love, the plan of redemption, God seeking out Adam when he hid at the fall, the preservation of Israel, and the sending of Christ and the Holy Spirit to the church. All outward acts. This outwardness is at the core of God's nature. He is a fountain, perpetually overflowing with all that He is. When we worship God, we become more like Him, outward beings. Let's look at how God has been consistently outward in His relations with mankind throughout history. God walked with Adam in the garden, and later Moses found God's presence in the tabernacle, which was a type of Eden. Then, further down the road, the Holy of Holies would be God's dwelling place in the temple, and Jesus would be the next temple, God's presence being in His church. The church has now been placed on a mission, an outward mission, to make all necessary sacrifices to expand the worship of God to all people. Our task is to expand Eden and bring God's presence to the ends of earth. In Revelation, we see a description of a great multitude that no one can number, from every nation, from all tribes, peoples, and languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, proclaiming praises to God. Notice, every nation, all tribes, all peoples, and all languages. The Great Commission is called the Great Commission because it's the Great Commission. Jesus said, "Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you." We see a key here that tells us that this task wasn't given to the apostles alone, but to all of us. Jesus told the disciples to teach their disciples to obey everything that Jesus commanded them. And one of those commands right here being to go and make disciples of all nations. Ukrainians are a people who've been told for centuries that Protestants are a cult. It's not so simple there to start a church as just renting a building and inviting families in the neighborhood. Unfortunately, people won't come. Dozens and dozens, maybe even hundreds of church plants have failed in Ukraine. Usually, primarily church planting is the best way to spread the gospel in a community. In Ukraine's culture, with all of its stereotypes, finding creative ways of connecting with people is important. In order for people to listen to you, they must first trust you. In order to trust you, they must first know you. We need to spend time with people there and do the hard work of making them our friends. Some of these friendships become discipleship opportunities, and through this, we're building God's church. It doesn't begin with the church and then discipleship. It begins with discipleship and then church. In Ukraine, if you visit McDonald's, you will see 8 or so cash registers going at once. Why? Because American fast food there is a novelty. We have an innovative vision that will be a total novelty in Ukraine. A gospel-centered, gospel-fueled public recreation center bringing hundreds and hundreds of kids in the city to us. We're willing to do anything to reach them. And we're not asking, what do we want to do with our lives? What are we comfortable with? Or even, what are we good at? We're asking, what works in this culture at this time in history? What optimizes God's glory in this culture at this time in history? And then we're doing that thing with the best of our ability to the glory of God. Discipleship's not merely corporate pulpit proclamation one day of the week. That's just a part of it. Discipleship's not learned in a Bible college, ministry training, or seminary. The knowledge is important, very, very important, but that's only a fraction of it. Discipleship's not hanging out with people you're familiar with who are just like you or who agree with you 83.49% of the time. Discipleship means serving alongside people, teaching them how to pray and read their Bible, how to kill sin, how to detect and tear down idols, how to live for God's glory and not their own, and how to disciple others themselves. Discipleship takes having grown to the degree that you can teach while not thinking you have to know everything, have all the answers in a PhD, or be able to walk on water before you get started. Discipleship involves prioritizing others and a lot of stepping out of your comfort zone. It demands death to self, and it happens when you step out and start doing it. It's not easy, but in time you get better at it. And no school or book can teach you that. This is the mission we are all called to, and this is what we're doing in Ukraine. If you can say with confidence, it's not your role to go and disciple people in this way, will you take part and hold the rope for those who are by giving and praying? Prayer does more for the work than anything else. And some of us can do all three. Serve as missionaries, whether that's local or abroad, pray for missionaries and give to missionaries. And for most of us, the great majority of us, I think that this is what God really wants. Will you join us in this mission? We can train you in discipling others and give you opportunities to grow in it. And we can teach you about the culture and get you going in Ukraine as a missionary. But it takes more than that. Missions begins with you beholding the beauty of Christ. Paul taught us that when we behold Jesus' glory, we are supernaturally being transformed. Here in 2 Corinthians 3:18, we see that we become like that which we worship. Transformation comes about in your life by seeing and delighting in the beauty of Christ, by simply beholding Him. As we worship God, we become outward people. More than asking you to help us achieve our vision, I would encourage you to seek to behold His beauty. Enter into His presence daily, and you will change your world and countless others. God giving you a heart for missions, transforming your paradigms, priorities, and desires, making His heart yours, begins in your prayer closet. The rest is just details. And now you're probably wondering, so if robots will have artificial intelligence someday, will they be able to be born again? And so we promise to cover this in our next talk. Real quick, I'd like to go over what our mission's primary needs are. To get things started, we need a minimum monthly financial need of $15,000. which would give us 5 to 7 full-time staff to oversee this rec center. If you have any sports equipment or art equipment or rec center equipment of any kind, we would greatly appreciate it, and we have very efficient ways of getting that to Ukraine. We're also seeking an executive director, someone experienced and skilled who loves Jesus madly and would like to help us serve full-time building the organization in the States while we head up things abroad in Ukraine. We also have a few positions available for active board members, and we would like to start making new relationships with short-term and long-term missionaries to help us serve in Ukraine. So meet me in the back if you'd like more information about that. Also in September, we're going to be launching an awareness campaign called the Miracle Worker Campaign. So give us your contact information and we can keep you notified when that starts and how you can win some cool things and some cool Miracle Worker t-shirts and help us spread the word online about the vision. So thank you so much for listening to this presentation. We love you, God bless you, and we're looking forward to talking with each one of you soon.